Assalamu alaikum, dear brothers and sisters. Bismillah, alhamdulillah, salatu wassalam ala rasulillah, amma ba'd. Today I want to remind myself and you of some of the general rules of fasting in Ramadan. As you know, Ramadan is very near and it's the greatest month in the Islamic calendar year. And we must try and be happy to welcome it. And also we must remember its great position in Islam. Fasting in the month of Ramadan, as you know very well, is one of the great pillars of Islam. The Prophet ﷺ fasted and told his companions to fast. Fasting in Ramadan was made obligatory in the year 2nd of Hijrah, or the second year of Hijrah. I will generally say some general rulings without going deep into proofs and other things. And if you want to familiarize yourselves with proofs, then alhamdulillah we have Bulugh al-Maram translated into English. We have Bukhari, Muslim and other books of hadith translated into English. You can go and read the chapters on fasting and the books of fasting. Quick reminder of the great virtue of Ramadan. The Prophet ﷺ said, who fasted Ramadan out of believing that it's obligatory and expecting the reward from Allah, then he will have all his previous sins forgiven. He also said the same about standing in prayer in the month of Ramadan. And when Ramadan comes, he said, the gates of paradise are open and the gates of the hellfire are locked, and the worst of the shayateen are chained. Also he said that Allah said that fasting is only for me and I will reward for it by myself. And as you also know, there is a special gate in paradise entitled Ar-Rayyan, which comes from quenching your thirst. This word Rayyan, and it is only for fasting people. First of all, the meaning of fasting in the Sharia, not in the language, in the Sharia. Fasting in the Sharia means to fast or to refrain from food, drink, sexual intercourse and other things that break the fast from through Fajr until Maghrib with the intention of worshipping Allah. As you know, fasting of Ramadan is an obligation, and we will look now who must fast. All Muslims who have reached puberty. And just to recap on puberty, with boys it is the appearance of hair in the pubic area, or ejaculation, or the boy reaching the age of 15. The girls have the same the three signs. Also the appearance of the menstrual cycle. The person must be in his right mind. He must not be mad or psychologically disadvantaged. If, for example, in such a case where they fall in and out of madness, then if they have, the scholars said, one full day when they are not in that state, they are in their right mind, they have the obligation to fast on those days. Anyone who is not sick or ill, that prevents the fasting. Anyone who is not traveling, because a traveler is permitted not to fast, but he must compensate those days after Ramadan. Also, any woman who is not in her menstrual cycle or postnatal bleeding, if they can, they also must compensate after Ramadan and preferably before the next Ramadan. The third issue is, must we fast with a Muslim country, especially Saudi Arabia, or with our local Islamic communities? Of course, this issue is very topical in non-Muslim countries, in the West where the Muslims live, and other countries. Generally in Muslim countries we don't have such a problem, but this is addressed to non-Muslim countries in the West, in the UK, Australia, America, Canada, other places where we don't actually have what we call al-awqaf, or the Islamic departments looking after these issues. So I want to say the following. Considering the fact that the scholars of Islam since the time of the Prophet's companions radiallahu anhum have differed on this issue, i.e. namely the issue of if someone has seen the crescent of the moon of Ramadan, must all people fast, or must each location have their own fast or their own ru'ya, observation and seeing that the crescent of Ramadan. This is an issue of difference, as we know from the books of hadith, from the time of the companions radiallahu anhum. That's the first thing to consider. Secondly, most Muslims nowadays, they do not look out for the moon. So they just rely on a Muslim country, especially Saudi Arabia, to announce it. The third principle or the third observation I would like to share with you is that very often disagreements on these issues in some countries, in some non-Muslim countries especially, lead to very big negative consequences. So I would advance the view that it's better to fast with your local community, because we have a hadith, fasting is when all the people fast or when you fast, and breaking the fast is when the people break the fast, and sacrifice is when all the people, adha, is when you sacrifice or all the people sacrifice. It was one of the opinions of Imam Ahmad rahimahullah. This was the opinion of Ibn Taymiyyah, which he at length discussed in his books and in his fatwa. And from our time, or our contemporary scholars, we have Sheikh Ibn Baz rahimahullah, who used to advocate it. And also this was the fatwa of the Council of Senior Scholars in Saudi Arabia. So it's not only Sheikh Ibn Baz. And the International Islamic Fiqh Council, that each country has the right to decide by itself when to start Ramadan and to do Eid, and base those decisions on their own scholars and Islamic departments. So if, for example, our Islamic communities or community leaders, they do not do it according to observation, which is the Islamic way to do it, or wait 30 days of Sha'ban, then of course it's a mistake. But for us it would be a mistake not to fast with the community as well. So if, however, someone believes, because there are other opinions on the issue, that, and since the time of the Salaf, and like I said, from the Sahaba time, then no problem. Most scholars, they agree that if you fast based on your own, and that is what they discussed, if you yourselves have seen it, of course that's extremely rare nowadays. But if you believe that you must fast, then of course it's better not to make it known to other people and to create problems. The fourth issue is when to make the intention for fasting. It must be made during the night before Fajr. Some scholars or a number of scholars have allowed to make the intention for the whole of Ramadan, but it must be renewed every night. The fifth issue, who is allowed not to fast in Ramadan? Those who cannot physically, because of ill health or because of being frail, to fast, they're allowed not to fast, especially if the doctors have recommended them or they have forbidden them to fast. If the illness is possible that it will be cured, meaning that something that modern medicine is able to cure, then the person must wait until he or she is cured and compensate after Ramadan or at appropriate time. However, if the illness or sickness is not at the moment possible to be cured by modern medicine, then this person must feed a poor person one meal for each day that they have not fasted. So it would be 30 for Ramadan. And it must be done when the fasting day is finished or when the whole of Ramadan is finished. Also, a traveler is allowed not to fast, but he must also compensate. If he fasts and it is valid and it's counted, if it is difficult for him, it's not recommended to fast, and if it's very difficult, then it is generally haram for them to fast, because the Prophet ﷺ said about such people that they are disobeying, they are the disobedient ones. Also, women who have the menstrual cycle or postnatal bleeding, it is haram for them to fast, and it's not counted, and they have a sin if they fast, if they knew, of course, knowingly. They must compensate the days after Ramadan. Breastfeeding and pregnant women, if it's difficult for them, of course they have a right not to fast. If they can, they must compensate. If not, they must feed for every day that they have missed a poor person if they can. Also, another point I would like to make is we must try and avoid everything that reduces the reward of our fasting and is in itself haram or leads to haram, to forbidden things. For example, to tell lies, to say what is haram, to curse, to act in an ignorant manner. Also, we must protect our eyes, our ears, our even thoughts and our heart from thinking and feeling and trying to see, for example, haram, to look at haram, to listen to haram, and to think bad things about Allah and about other people and things like this. Also, we must try to feed people and to invite them to iftar as much as possible during Ramadan, if you can every day. If you can't, once a week, twice a week, 3 times a week. If you can't, at least once a month. Try to do more sadaqah as much as possible, to give help, financial help and other help to needy people, to try and learn the Quran, recite the Quran, study the Quran, which is very important. Quran is not only for reading, it must be studied. Do more dua, as much dua as possible, because it's accepted especially from the fasting person, not only at iftar time, but during the fasting. To repent much to Allah, because He frees for every night and every day, He frees people from the hellfire, which means you will never go. Inshallah, may Allah make us from them. And to ask forgiveness from Him a lot, to try and seek the knowledge of Islam more, and so that we can fast properly and we can continue doing good deeds after Ramadan, and to increase your prayers in Ramadan as much as possible, not only in the masjid but also at home. What breaks the fast? First of all, food, drink and any nourishment that is administered to the body through drips, injections or any other medicines. Also sexual intercourse, for which the person must pay expiation, free a slave, or if he can't, of course nowadays there are no slaves, fast 2 months consequently, one after another without breaks, or feed 60 poor people. Also ejaculation caused through one's own action, by kissing or by hugging or by masturbation, which is haram in Islam. Menstrual cycle, postnatal bleeding also break the fast. So if the lady got her menstrual cycle just before Maghrib, she must compensate that day, or if she gave birth or her postnatal started before Maghrib, she must also compensate. Also, the scholar said infusion of blood, since it gives energy and feeds the body. Induced vomiting. So if the person vomits by himself, he must not compensate, or he does not break the fast. But if he induces vomiting, then that breaks the fast. However, hijama doesn't break the fast. We have a difference of opinion. Mostly the Hanbali scholars, they say it does. But the majority of ulama of Islam don't agree with them. And we have a hadith in Sahih Bukhari that the Prophet ﷺ did hijama while he was fasting. As a consequence, blood donations also don't break the fast, or any blood test and things like this. However, if hijama makes the person weak, of course it's not advisable to do, and that is the opinion of almost all the Sahaba. Also, out of forgetfulness, if a person eats, drinks or does anything else that normally breaks the fast, then it doesn't break the fast if it's done out of forgetfulness. Or if he's coerced against his own will, then of course, or if he's forced to do something, for example, a fly flies into the mouth against his will, or if he's coerced by others to break the fast with the threat of imprisonment or even of taking his life, then of course he's not to blame. If he only eats or drinks what they force him to do, he can continue his fast. Also, some advice from the Prophet ﷺ in terms of suhoor, making it later as close to Fajr as possible, and iftar, making it earlier after Maghrib straight away when the whole disk of the sun is set. You're allowed to smell food if you need to, like for cooking, or to taste it by the tongue, but not to swallow. A lot of issues, some of the issues I couldn't, actually all of the issues rather I couldn't say, but some of the issues. For example, during the day, if a child reaches puberty, in which case he or she must fast, or a person regains consciousness or his mind, or a non-Muslim becomes a Muslim, what must they do? We have a number of opinions. The opinion that many scholars had, including some of our contemporary scholars, is compensate this day after Ramadan. There are some issues which are also important. The person who is fasting is allowed to have a bath, have a shower. However, it's advised against swimming, since swimming makes the person swallow water. And also I would like to quote some of the International Islamic Fiqh Council's decision in terms of medical issues that do not break the fast. They said that anything that is administered through the eye drops or ear drops, since eyes and ears do not serve as channels to the stomach, then it's permissible. They've also included nasal drops, but I personally don't think that it's a correct decision, because we have a number of scholars who say that it breaks the fast, since the nose has a direct connection with the throat, and the Prophet ﷺ advised against, during the fast, even using too much water when rinsing the nose because of fasting. So nasal drops, not advisable at all, not allowed. Or nasal sprays, for example. Tablets that are put under the tongue, they said, do not break the fast if the person avoids swallowing the juice that comes or the water that comes from them. Also, what is put in the vagina from different suppositories, or different, for example, cameras or fingers, or for examination, for example, by gynecologists, or putting a coil into the womb or anything to examine the womb doesn't break the fast. The opening of the urethra, where the urine flows and comes out, for men and women, anything that's put inside there for examination, like a catheter or examination device, doesn't break the fast, or any medicine for that matter, or even for washing that area, because it's not connected with the stomach. Also, any dental work, removing the teeth, working on the teeth, filling them, cleaning them. For example, also we have miswak, and we have a toothbrush, as long as the person doesn't swallow. All of this is allowed and doesn't break. Gargling, for example, of the throat or the mouth, or any medicine that is required to treat the mouth, as long as the person doesn't swallow. Any injections that go through under the skin, for example, or through the muscle or the vein, unless some medicines in a liquid form are administered to feed the body. In that case, it's not allowed, or any injections that supply the body, for example, with glucose, as an example. Oxygen doesn't break the fast, they said. Anything that puts the person at ease before operations and makes him not to feel the operation. that it doesn't break the fast unless they use anything that that feeds the body, as again anesthesia. Any anesthesia doesn't break the fast unless they use something to feed the body or supply it with liquids. Anything that the body absorbs through the skin, like ointments, creams, fats, oils, or plasters that treat the body and supply the body with any medicines or chemical elements. Also, inserting a catheter or anything similar into the blood vessels or veins or arteries, or anything that supplies the heart to examine, that doesn't break the fasting. The same applies to the stomach itself. If something, the intestine or the inside of the intestines or the stomach, if the doctors feel a need to insert a camera, for example, that they take back, that doesn't break the fast. Or even if they perform a surgical operation, of course without supplying or putting the body on the supply of drips or glucose, for example. Also, specimen samples taken from the body or from skin or from some parts or organs of the body, or any blood tests, they don't break the fast unless it's necessary to give certain liquids. Then in that case it breaks the fast. So anything that's inserted that doesn't have the meaning of food or drink doesn't break the fast. The same applies to the brain, spinal cord, and other things. So this is just a short list of things that don't break the fast. Of course, I can't cover everything. This is just a reminder. I advise myself and you to revise the ahkam of Ramadan, the rulings of Ramadan and the rulings of Taraweeh. I will inshallah try to make other videos on Taraweeh and other issues of Ramadan. May Allah help us to fast in a proper way and accept from us all that we do in Ramadan and other than Ramadan. Help us to be good Muslims and learn from this great month. وجزاكم الله خيرا.